NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, that Obama has called for and signed, stipulates that even American citizens can now be targeted by the military, picked up, and imprisoned.
In 1720, there was the last pandemic of large-scale bubonic plague, also called the Great Plague of Marseille. Records show that the bacterium killed around 100,000 people in Marseille. It is assumed that the bacterium was spread by flies infected with bacterium. The first recording of cholera pandemic occurred in 1820, which took place in Asia, in the countries of Thailand, Indonesia, and the Philippines. In the year 1820, there are registered over 100,000 deaths in Asia caused by this bacterium. The pandemic is supposed to have started from people who drank water from lakes contaminated with this bacterium. In the year 1920, the Spanish flu took place 100 years ago, at the time where people were dealing with the H1 flu virus that had suffered from genetic mutation, making it much more dangerous than the normal virus. This virus infected 500 million people and killed over 100 million people worldwide. This pandemic was the deadliest in recorded history. You guys can't sit up there and expect us to believe what the news is telling us. First of all, we already know that the news always lies. They all work for the same team, so we're gonna have to figure things out on our own pretty much. And they're trying to tell us that this stuff came from animals and stuff like that. And then you have people in Europe saying that they don't know what this virus is. You got people in America saying that it came from animals, and we got China in here over panicking, talking about they don't know what's going on. They don't know where the virus came from. They're making up excuses with snakes and crap like that. But they're quarantining like 56 million people, closing down cities, shutting down shop or whatnot. They're about to build a hospital in 6 days, 2 hospitals, as a matter of fact. And on top of that, I know for a fact that China's lying to us about their death toll. Most viruses that we have, like the H1N1 and all these other viruses that we be having news reports on and stuff like that, people are not just lying dead in the streets. People are like dropping like flies over there in China in the streets. You go in the hospital, you see people already dead on the floor. You got thousands of people in these hospitals waiting to be checked on. I mean, if there's some kind of pandemic going on out there, don't run to the hospital where there's thousands of people waiting to be checked in, and it's talking about 2 to 3 days waiting time, and they're all standing there waiting sick. You might not even be sick. You might have like a common cold, but yeah, you're gonna stand around people who probably really have the virus and didn't catch the virus. Stay your butts at home, keep your hands clean, stay away from crowded areas, stay away from clubs, stay away from amusement parks, anything that or airports where you can like contract this virus. All right, check this out. It says the coronavirus. The virus that China is facing has already killed 774 people so far. Despite efforts by the government and other institutions to quarantine entire cities, it seems that the virus has managed to spread beyond China's borders. Now, clearly this virus is incredibly aggressive. It's an aggressive virus, and they say that it sits in your body for 7 to 10 days before you even get a symptom. So imagine if you already have the virus and you're spreading it, and they say you can get this stuff through the mouth or through the eyes. So imagine you just spreading this stuff for the 7 days in all the places and locations that you've been and people that you've come in contact with. And let's say if I'm already infected and I come home to my children and they get infected, and then my 3 children go to school, and then they affect the people at school, and then those people at school affect their people at home, and so on and so on when their parents go to work. So this can be a potential very hazardous and dangerous situation for the world. And come on now, let's be real. 1720, 1820, 1920, and 2020, all of a sudden we have viruses, outbreaks, these pandemics every 100 years, and we expect us to believe that this stuff wasn't man-made or geoengineered or whatever you want to call it. This stuff was weaponized. It was put out there for a reason. This may be a way for the government to get us forced vaccinated. You know, understand what I'm saying? So I mean, just look out for numbers and stuff like that. They normally say like 33,000 people died from this, or whatever, you know. So pay attention to what's going on around you. Let's make the right moves and stay away from crowded areas, like I said before. I'm going to go ahead and close this with the SGT report. He's got pretty good info on this topic right now, and he has connections with more people than I do about this topic. So I'm going to end it with him, and stay tuned for next week. I'm on Keeping Up with the Joneses. I'm going to be showing you how you can better protect yourself and the things you need to buy just in case a pandemic reaches your neighborhood. Thanks for watching.
If you're paying attention to the situation in Wuhan, China, there is a very real threat to human survival spreading like wildfire right now. Hollywood movies like Steven Soderbergh's film Contagion from 2011 have predictively programmed just such a pandemic. Virologist Guan Yi of the University of Hong Kong's Laboratory of Emerging Infectious Diseases says, quote, "I've seen it all: bird flu, SARS, influenza A, swine fever, and the rest. But the Wuhan pneumonia makes me feel extremely powerless. Most of the past epidemics were controllable, but this time I'm petrified." Terrifying video is coming out of China. People in China are literally collapsing in the streets, and 56 million Chinese are on lockdown as the virus spreads to Australia, Malaysia, and yes, the United States. Hospitals in Wuhan look like a scene from a horror movie, with many dead lying on the floors, strewn amongst the living. As increasingly desperate Wuhan residents face two-day lines to see a doctor. A UK researcher is predicting 250,000 Chinese will have coronavirus in 10 days. And friend of SGT report, Chris Martinson, who has a PhD from Duke with a specialty in toxicology, explains why that prediction is a very real possibility.
How easy does this jump between people? So if I had it and I walked into a room of 10 people, how many people on average would get that? If you have an R not greater than 1, meaning I have a chance on average of walking into a room full of 10 and one other person catches it, that's enough to sustain transmission. An R naught of less than 1, this thing will die out on its own over time. But anything over 1 is a concern. It's thought that this has an R naught of somewhere between 1.5 and 2.5 or 3.8. This is a very infectious disease, more than capable of creating a pandemic.
At the time of this report, 3 coronavirus cases have been found in the United States, 1 in Chicago, 1 in Washington, and the latest on Sunday reported in California. 63 people have been tested in 22 states, and officials say they expect that number to grow. Peter Sweden on Twitter rightly asks, why haven't all flights from China to the United States been stopped? The virus spreads much faster than the Spanish flu, and the Chinese are saying it's a grave situation. Researchers in the Truth Media are already finding circumstantial evidence that this, too, is all being done by design. And a coronavirus pandemic simulation run 3 months ago predicted 65 million people could die, and the Wuhan Ultra Biohazard Lab was studying the world's most dangerous pathogens. But don't worry, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, through the group CEPI, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, has given Innovio Pharmaceuticals in Philadelphia a $9 million grant to develop a coronavirus vaccine. As I was finishing up for this report, China's President Xi admits the grave coronavirus is accelerating. Hong Kong has declared a state of emergency, and China is building 2 new hospitals in Wuhan in just 6 days to try to meet the demand for the sick who now need beds. I bring you this update to remind you how fragile our modern-day existence and way of life is, and that there is a multifaceted, never-ending war being waged against that way of life.
Officially called 2019 nCoV, it's not easy to detect, much like a cold or the flu. It's spread the same way, through coughing, sneezing, or contact with an infected surface. Initial symptoms can be simply a headache, fever, and a cough. It can progress to pneumonia, though, causing breathing problems and kidney failure. For people with weakened immune systems, it can be fatal.
But the point is, it's all so fragile and so easy to tear down. I don't think the virus will spread like wildfire across the United States and kill millions. But how quickly all of the infighting and all of our differences would fade away in an instant if it did.